Welcome to Handcrafting Your Retirement with Brett Ramsey from Artisan Wealth Strategies. In this podcast, we help retirees as well as those who are considering retirement overcome generic wealth management advice that limits your future. We do this by handcrafting customized financial strategies centered on your unique lifestyle. Jump on board for this journey where we delve into strategies that can help make your money outlast you, as Brett draws from years of experience with guest experts to eliminate cookie-cutter saving strategies.
Hello and welcome to Handcrafting Your Retirement with your host, Brett Ramsey, where we talk about what you want in retirement and how to make it happen. I'm Wendy McConnell. Hey, Brett, how are you?
I'm well today, Wendy. Thank you for asking.
Glad to hear it. I was hoping for one of your nifty stories.
Well, I like to always connect with our listeners and talk about what I call real life things that happen to people. And so I've got a little story today that I think will it'll make more sense once we get to know our guests today, Julie and David. But have you ever been to a party and you're the new people in the party? And everybody else kind of knows each other and you don't really know people that well. So recently that happened to my wife and I, and it was one of those parties where they decided to play a game to let everybody get to know each other. And, most people that meet me think I'm pretty competitive, and then they meet my wife and they're like, Brett, you're not competitive at all. So my wife and wife hates to lose. And so we're playing a game, and unfortunately it was a game that clearly we had never played before. So we really didn't understand the rules. And everybody else that was there had kind of played it before. And it was one of those get to know you games and everything. And I just kind of could tell my wife, hates to lose, and she doesn't like to look bad in front of new people. And so she was kind of getting anxious about it. And, it kind of made the evening and the thing kind of not the way we wanted it to be. And what I think happens is a lot of times to us as we get near retirement, it's kind of like going to that dinner party where you don't really know everybody and you're not super comfortable because you're kind of the new person to it, or you're the person that doesn't know all the rules to the game tonight. And I think really as you think, and we're going to get to know Julie and David, that's a little bit of their story as things have changed. They've kind of gotten to some new parties, some places they maybe didn't think they were going to go or be invited to, or things that have kind of done some different things. And I really think that's a lot of people and how they feel as they start to get near retirement. And that's why I asked Julie and David to join us today, is because they're kind of at that near point. They're not quite stepped over the line just yet. And they've been planning for several years to get to this line, and some things have changed. And so I think that's really not uncommon. And a lot of people feel that way, like they're the new folks at the dinner party and they don't quite fit in, or they don't know the rules to the game. And I think that they can, as our listeners hear this story, I think they're going to hear a lot of things that are probably similar to what's happening in their own lives. And I think just hearing from other people go through that really is going to help, our listeners kind of deal with their own fears and their own anxieties, to know, one, they're not alone, that what they're going through, a lot of people go through at this stage of life. And I think Julie and David have faced some interesting, some challenges. They've handled it really, really well. And I can't wait for you guys to get to know them a little bit today.
All right, well, let's meet David and Julie. Why don't you introduce them for us, Brett?
Well, I'm going to let them introduce themselves and tell us a little bit of their background. So let's start with Julie. Just give us a little bit of, your career background and kind of what you do for a living, and then we'll switch over to David.
Okay. I'm an accountant, and I've been with my company for 33 years, and that's a very, very long time. It's been wonderful throughout the years, and I've been very happy there. Over the last few years, it's made a lot of changes, so that's kind of
right
helped me along in this process.
Right. And I think, one is just, I grew up in an era when I first started working. I worked for a large company, and people work there like their whole careers. But now when we hear somebody working somewhere, one place for, 33 years, you said?
Yes.
Right. Like, one, that's why I wanted her to be here today, is because she's seen a lot of change in those times. And as in businesses change and the job changes and things like that. So she's going to be sharing a little bit about that with us a little bit later. And how about you, David? Let's just give a little bit about your professional background.
Sure. Well, coming out of college, I went to work at a brand new television station in Indianapolis. It had been on the air less than a year, and that was what is now Channel 59. Before it was a Fox affiliate, it was WPDS, and started my working career there. Worked there for about 8 years, and then moved back to where I'd gone to school at Anderson University, and worked there in video production and teaching video production classes in a production company for 26 years. My daughter went to school at Anderson University, and so I benefited from some of those benefits that you get as a faculty or staff member at a university, a small Christian university in this case. And she was graduating, and an opportunity came which I had this opportunity presented as if I wanted to interview for a position at the company where I now work in years prior to that, and the timing just wasn't good. But at this point, the timing was pretty good, and I knew this was probably my last chance to make a change if I wanted to make a change. So I came to work at Innovative back at the very beginning of 2020. January 1 or January 2nd, 2020 was my first official full-time day on the job here, and have been working here since that time.
Right. So would you say it was 26 or 28 years?
Yeah, 26 years at Anderson University. Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's kind of fascinating. What we have here is some folks that have worked for long periods of time, and then one that's gone through some company changes, and one that's gone through a little bit of a career change, what I call kind of later in the game than some people sometimes are comfortable with. But we're going to talk a little bit about that. And you also mentioned your family. So just tell me a little bit about your family structure and kind of maybe your parents, your kids, and just kind of a little bit about how you're set up. Sure.
Well, we've got twin boys who are 39 years old now. Unbelievable. They're from from my prior marriage, but they're our kids. And Chris, who lives in Anderson, he's got two children. We've got a granddaughter who's 16 years old, and we've got a grandson who is coming up on 2 years old. So that's good. My dad lives in Anderson as well. He'll be 92 this year in October. And our daughter Allison is in her upper 20s, and she's a nurse in Indianapolis, and we've got her dog at our house right now, actually, as she's trying to sleep after a shift last night. So.
And Julie, how about a little bit about your family structure?
I've lost both of my parents now. Over the last, my dad's now gone 5 years, and my mom just this past December. So I've lost them, and we are, as David said, we're empty nesters, except when we're babysitting the dog. So that's kind of our life. So
well, and I know that the family structure is important, and we're going to talk about a little bit about that, of how it impacts some of our decisions, right, around our own retirement, right? So we'll get to that in just a little bit, but let's just go through the history real quick of kind of how we met. So maybe you can share with our listeners, like, the first time we met, kind of where we were and why you decided to come to that class.
Sure. I think we were over at an Ivy Tech campus over by Fort Bend, if I remember right.
Yeah.
And Julie and I were to that point where we'd both been contributing to our 401k or 403bk or whatever the plans are, all the different numbers, working in not-for-profits. And so we had contributed to those faithfully for, golly, I've been giving since my first job. So since 1985, I've been putting into retirement plan. And she'd been doing so as well. So we had been pretty much all in the market and putting things in and letting it roll. not biting our fingernails too hard when the market went down, because we knew we had time, but we were getting to that point that we knew that time was coming, that we needed to start thinking about changing the way that we were doing things and looking at what was going to happen after we decided to retire and trying to figure out how to decide when to retire. So that's why we went to that class and got some really good information and started to do some things on our own, but realized that seeking the help of a financial planner was probably in our best interest.
I was to the point where I thought we were okay, but I wanted some confirmation that we were doing the right things.
Right. And I think that's a really important phrase that you're saying there, Julie, is I use a slightly different word. I talk about confidence, right? So you're getting here and we're kind of in that home stretch. We've talked about kind of picking the actual retirement date to occur. And so one of the things that we want to think about is helping our clients kind of get that confidence. So what are the key things that you're both kind of looking at and thinking about that are helping you feel more confident that now is almost the time to retire? I know that we're maybe 6 months to a year away from that process.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead, honey?
Well, with all the changes that my company has gone through and that I'm experiencing at work, it feels like the right time to make that shift. And I guess COVID kind of prepared me for that. I've enjoyed my job throughout the years, but the last few, like I said, it had been a little bit rough. But as far as the separation from the job, I think the whole COVID experience has kind of helped that. I know what it's like to be away from the job and kind of isolated to those connections I had at work. So in that regard, I feel like I'm ready. And the other thing is, I feel like we've gone through changes in our family as well. Like I said, I've lost my parents now, and that lets you think more about maybe things that you would rather be doing with your time and the life that you have left, versus just continuing with it, continuing on in that cycle. So those have been things that
I think we've struggled with the whole work life balance in terms of that's been, work has been more consuming, especially since we've been empty nesters. And we're I think ready to focus on some other things that we would enjoy doing that we don't want to miss out on a chance to do. I think the one thing that scares us at, looking at retiring somewhere around 62 is the whole health insurance issue. And we've talked through that together a little bit about that. We're still looking into, the options that will help us to get over the hump and say, yeah, we can do this and get those things figured out. But Brett, you've done a good job of showing us numbers and showing us what the future can look like financially. And so I think you've got us convinced that we can do this. But it's still, you put in and you put in and you put in and you watch this grow to a certain number or whatever. You could keep looking for that certain number,
right? And
then you have a bad day in the market and it does this, and it's it's those things that I think we are confident enough that we know that we can do this, and we can structure and adjust our lifestyle. We've done that before, and so that we can make it in that retirement time. But It's still a little bit nerve wracking to think about, watching those balances not always go the way that you've been watching them go. So, but the other thing that on just from being more involved with my dad recently here and looking at his finances. Now he's in a totally different situation, school teacher, 35 years, same district, pension at that time. Also had invested my mom had invested during those times and put stuff into 401k plans. And he's obviously in the RMD stage now. And so looking at the amount, he can easily live on his pension and his Social Security, but now he's being forced to take these larger amounts out. And so just thinking more about the planning that we need to do and work with you on things for the future as we get to those later stages.
Yeah. No, you guys have faced what I call some of the items that head on, right? So Julie, I think, faced and dealt with like, hey, it's not uncommon now that we have to, for lack of a better term, get retrained or change a little bit of our job content, or there's a new software, or there's a new way to do the job. And sometimes that goes smoothly and we still love it. And other days it's like, man, I don't know if I want to go through all that and learn all that stuff again at this stage of my career. And it can be daunting. And we see that a lot because, companies are changing. The technology that we use to do our job is changing. And David, is seen a little bit of that change as well and made a late career change. But I think there was a key element in there that I really think that your current family situations have highlighted. And Julie touched on it, is what do we want to do with our time? So one of the questions that I always ask my clients is, all right, so you're working, and David even mentioned, like, we're working a lot now because I'm passionate about what I'm doing. I'm in it. I'm an empty nester. I don't have some of the same things pulling me back home. And so sometimes I'm asked, well, how much do you work? 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week, whatever that number is. And I go, okay, what would you do with that time tomorrow if you weren't working? And I know we've talked about that and you guys have been chewing on that. And that was a little bit of your homework assignment after our last meeting. So this is one of those where I'm like the listener at home. I'm going to sit back and listen. So what are we going to do with that time when we stop working?
Well, I think we're going to spend more time with the little grandson. We enjoy that very much. He's going to be 2 the end of October, and he's a busy little fellow. And we really enjoy the time that we have him now, and looking forward to doing some things with him and sharing some of those times. Our last thing was trip to the zoo. That's the best. Seeing the zoo through a little one's eyes and the animals and all of that. And we want to be available to do that. We want to be there to help out our kids. They need us. They're adults and self-sufficient, but they will always be our kids. And when you get that call, hey, can you help me out? We're going to be there for them. Something I struggled a little bit with. I've lost my parents, and I second guess myself now. Maybe I should have spent more time. So that's also a consideration. So yeah. But
I think we've got projects around the house too. I know Julie has always talked about that she said, I'm a little bit more worried for me than I am for her, because she feels like she'll have no problem at all. I'm kind of concerned whether I'll have an issue or not, but I know Julie's got all of the things that we put away from when our daughter was young that are in envelopes and boxes that we've never done the baby book and the other things.
Yeah, I'd like to finish that baby book.
Finish the projects that started long ago, right?
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. We've got things around the house that we want to do. I would like to golf. I haven't golfed yet this year. I've got to go Saturday for a neighborhood outing, and that's going to be embarrassing. But I'd like to golf a little bit more and do some other things. We bought pickleball set a year and a half ago, and we haven't been out to play pickleball on our neighborhood court yet.
I'm looking forward to joining the ladies in the neighborhood
Yeah.
with some pickleball.
Yeah, I'd like to make some more connections within our neighbors, within church and things like that, just for those social activities. I think that's one thing, and women seem to do that better than men do. I've watched that with my dad and with my mom when she was alive. Once my mom passed, it was really hard for my dad because my mom was a social connection for
Mhm.
a lot of folks. So just trying to make some of those social connections that we've just really, all of our social connections, it seemed, were through our daughter and her involvement in high school sports or middle school sports and things like that. And then when that ends, you still keep in touch a little bit, but it's not the same, and you lose some of that. So, work connections, and I think we'll we both have friends that we've worked with over the years that we still keep in touch with, and we'll keep in touch with after
Yeah.
we're done. We just might have time to do some things socially that we don't have time to do now.
Well, I'm ready for the pickleball and the golf to begin. But I think your story there is a very similar story to some of our other clients, right? As we have our kids now have their kids, so we're grandparents, and so we're wanting to be with family. And Julie, you hit on something that I think shouldn't be like skipped by, that I think so many of us feel either, and I hate using the word regret or remorse, but we feel like maybe we missed some things, right? Because we prioritized work, or we prioritized that over the relationship at times. And I know I'm personally guilty of that. That's and David kind of hinted at that also, is that has a tendency to be a more male frequent answer, right? When I ask this question, is that we're not as relational as a general rule. I hate to overgeneralize, but that is consistent. And the way David said that is very accurate with what we see in our practice, is that it seems to be harder for men to have relationships after they get done working. Some of them are very good at it, and some find those social connections and those relationships, and others struggle with it because their connections were either through their spouse or they were through their other family members, like their kids, right? So I can't tell you how many relationships there were because I was coaching a ball team, or because my girls were involved in something that I don't have those relationships now, because I don't see those people that way anymore. And so I know that you're definitely going to be figuring that out. And I know you've been working on your health as well, to be able to be active and to be able to do those things. And you both look wonderful. Like I said, it's been a little bit since I've seen you, and you're continuing to do great. So I want to continue to just give people, one of our big themes is health, right? If we want to do these things at these different stages of our lives, we have to be able to do that. So we have to take care of ourselves. And I kind of want to transition here, because taking care of not only ourselves, but taking care of others is kind of the generation you're in, right? Is that we're launched our kids, and we now have grandkids potentially, but in some cases our parents are still a part of our equation, and we're starting to have to care for them. And I really want to bring out two different pieces of your story, because I think it captures two parts. One is David, I know you've been dealing with your father's aging. And then Julie, I want to talk a little bit about the estate component of your mother passing, and just how, dealing with other family members. So first, I want to start with David's story, because right now I think a lot of our clients and listeners are starting to really handle what happens as our parents age, and we have to kind of step up our level of care for them. So David, maybe you can just kind of tell a little bit about your dad's situation, and kind of how you've kind of had to step up your game a little bit to support him.
Yeah, my dad, my mom and dad, I grew up in Michigan, and my mom and dad taught in Michigan. And when they retired, my sons were young and in Anderson, Indiana. So they had both gone to Anderson College at the time. So they had lots of friends in Anderson. So, and dad grew up in Anderson. So they built a condo. They were thinking ahead when they built the condo. They built it basically ADA accessible, with large doors for the bathrooms and things like that, so that they could maneuver through there. And my dad's lived there. My mom passed away about 9 years ago, but my dad's lived there by himself since then. And that's been a good situation. It's gotten a little bit more challenging the last year or two, as he's gotten become 90 years old. And this last year, he suffered some issues that ended up putting him in nursing home for rehab initially. And he was in for some therapy and got to a point that he had decided that he was ready to go home. And even before he got home, he pretty much decided that he was wrong and he wasn't quite ready to go home. So we had a bit of a struggle for a couple of weeks before we could find a place where he would feel more comfortable. He moved in with us, which is hard because we don't have a first floor bedroom. We don't have a full bathroom on the first floor. And so, we figured something out and got something going. And he stayed with us for a week or two, adjusted work schedules. Everybody at work was very understanding. Finally got him into a place that was in Anderson, where his friends were, where his church was. He could still get a ride to church and do those things. But we continue to work through that. He's got a condo that needs some work on it. So he's still, we're still looking at, is there an option to get him home health care so that he can move back where he's more comfortable and feels more at home, and just bring the help into the house instead of having him at a facility.
Right.
Those are things that we're still working through and working together. And it's there are days that it's a struggle. He's not as happy as I'd like to see him be, but he understands too. So
yeah. And just the love, I mean, right there in that story, just hard maybe to explain sometimes that someone who's not gone through it, just the time demand on you, right, to work through that. Maybe just share just a little bit. I mean, like now, how much time, and I know a typical is not an easy way to say, but like during a week, do you spend supporting your dad?
Yeah, I wish I had more time to spend supporting him, quite frankly. But yeah, it's every night. Of course, we're on the phone and talking through things, and even if it's just checking in, but then it's, taking the trip over to Anderson to get the mail. We're still got mail going to his condo, and then going through that mail with him each week, going through he's been savvy enough to set up auto pay on most of his bills. So most of those are taken care of, but watching the finances, because now we're paying an assisted living fee monthly. And so making those adjustments and those transfers. He does have long-term health insurance, which we've not tapped into yet. And I have come to find out that dealing with that is going to be a full-time job because they don't want to pay.
Right.
And it's going to be jumping through a lot of hoops to do that. And he's paying a substantial amount every year and is paid in. And when we looked at what the actual lifetime benefit was, his comment was, well, I've probably paid that much into it. And you're telling me there's this cap on what I can take? And I said, yeah, here's what the cap is. So working through that, but
yeah. And that's just, and I think the key word there is work, right? There's a lot involved, right, in caring for a loved one at any stage, but certainly it's a new challenge. And Julie, I know it's still pretty fresh, and I don't want to open up a lot of difficult things for you, but maybe just share a little bit. I know the process that you've had to go through to kind of deal with what I call the settlement of an estate and some of the related family members, and not saying that it's gone poorly, but it's not been necessarily just easy either. There's a lot involved. Maybe you could tell that story a little bit.
There is a lot involved. And what I will say about David's situation and my situation, a big difference is David is an only child. So all of the responsibility has been on his shoulders. I have an older brother and an older sister. I'm the little trailer in the family. So, but I just want to say that that's a hard time, taking care of your parents and wanting to do the very best for them. But it really helps out when you have siblings to share that. As far as the settling, I know. I'm gonna tell this little story that my sister and I have had. My brother had been pretty hands off with mom and dad, he was there if they needed him, but pretty hands off. They were in touch and that. But so between Cheryl and I, Cheryl was sick care and I was well care. And I did more of the things for them. She did more of the doctors and the doctor appointments and those things. And she was at a place that it was better or easier for her to do that because she had already retired and I was still working. So that was very helpful. And then at the end, the three of us were left to settle things. One of the last things my dad said to me was, you need to make sure you all get along. And that's key.
Right.
So the three of us have been able to do that. And I think we've all worked in that for that. In addition to just my mom and dad's things, there's a family farm involved, and that involves my dad. It was between my dad and his brother, and Grandma and Grandpa set up a trust years and years ago. I remember, I think I had just started college, and I remember Grandma and Grandpa stopping by and him saying to me, I took care of you today.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it's always been, that the farm was for the 5 grandkids.
Right.
It was for my dad and my uncle. And when they were gone, it was to go to the grandkids.
Right.
And that's what it's done. The responsibility of the trust has fallen on my brother. He's the executor, or that I think that's the right term.
Yeah, or the trustee right now.
The trustee. He was the trustee. So I think his dealings with my sister and I were very easy. At times, my 2 cousins, it was a little more difficult.
Yeah.
But we've made it through, and we're looking at it. It isn't a trust, and there are 5 of us, but we're all aging out. We're getting to that point where maybe this isn't going to be great going on, and we've come to the decision to sell, and
Mm-hmm.
so that's what we're going to do. So,
yeah.
and that, my brother's done a good job keeping everybody up to speed on what's going on and where we all stand. And he got us all together and sat us down and said, I want to go around to each of you and you say, are you in favor of this, selling? And that's what we did. And we're moving in that direction, and everybody feels good about it. So
yeah, I think
That's
the
good.
way that our brothers handled that is in terms of, he copies documents for everybody and lets everybody see those. And he's, calls a family meeting and everyone comes together, and husbands are invited as well. Spouses are invited. And, he wants to hear everybody's input, and it truly has been a collaborative effort. So,
Yeah. Well, hey, I really appreciate you guys telling so much of your story today. And I started this with maybe a story that didn't make sense, right? Like coming to a party where we don't maybe know everybody, or we don't know the rules to the game. And I think you guys are living what I call not knowing the rules to the retirement game, because it's changed quite a bit since just we met a few years ago, right? We've had job changes. We've had family dynamic changes. We're supporting loved ones. There's, trusts and family farms and things of this nature to deal with that we didn't think we were going to have to deal with. And that story, I think, is the most common story, actually, right? Is that most people are getting to this stage of life, and you guys are kind of in the middle. launching kids, getting grandkids, and still dealing with your aging parents and the family situation. So I just thank you for telling your story, and hopefully you're getting more and more confident about your retirement. So thank you for being on today with us and talking through your situation.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So, Brett, how can people get in touch with you if they have some questions?
Well, I love that interweb place, so they can come out and meet us at the World Wide Web and visit us at artisanwealthstrategies.com. From there, you can have access to my calendar, my phone number, and my email. Find us there and let's talk, because I can't help you if I don't know you. I'd like to know you.
Well, thank you, all of you, and thank you for joining us today. Please like, follow, and share this podcast. Until next time, I'm Wendy McConnell.
Thank you for listening to Handcrafting Your Retirement. Visit our website at www.artisanwealthstrategies.com or give us a call at 317-660-2855. And don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Artisan Wealth Strategies. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.
Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor. Member FINRA, SIPC.